little fox.
The Bunnies meet Tommy Brock. Episode 1. A rainy day. It was a rainy day.
It's a perfect day for cleaning,
Flopsy said. Mopsy frowned.
Ugh,
She said.
cleaning is not fun.
Cottontail said. Flopsy gave dusters to her sisters. She got a broom. The 3 bunnies began to clean. Outside, Tommy Brock was looking for a new home. The badger was wet and cold. Then he spotted a den.
That den looks clean and dry.
Tommy thought.
I will move in.
Flopsy began scrubbing dishes. Mopsy and Cottontail were still dusting. Then the rain stopped. The sun came out. Mopsy looked at Cottontail. Cottontail looked at Mopsy.
Let's go outside.
Mopsy whispered. The 2 little rabbits sneaked outside. They hopped away fast down the lane.
It's so quiet.
Flopsy thought. She turned around.
Mopsy,
She called.
Cottontail.
Tommy dragged his things into the den.
Whew!
He said.
That was hard work. Now I need some food.
Just then, 2 bunnies hopped by. The Bunnies meet Tommy Brock. Episode 2. Flopsy looks for her sisters. Flopsy went outside.
Where are my sisters?
She said. Flopsy twitched her nose.
They went this way.
She said. She hopped along the path. Tommy Brock hurried back to his den. He was carrying Mopsy and Cottontail.
Rabbits!
Tommy thought happily. Tommy opened the oven door. He put the rabbits inside.
I'll eat dinner later.
He said. The 2 little bunnies started to cry.
I miss Mother and Flopsy.
Cottontail said.
Me too.
Mopsy said.
We'll never see them again.
The badger looked for more food. He found some eggs.
I will eat these too.
He said. Tommy yawned.
Ugh. I'm tired after moving.
He thought.
I will take a quick nap. Then I will eat my dinner.
Flopsy hopped along the lane. Her nose twitched near a den. Then she heard a cry.
Mopsy?
Flopsy thought. Just then, Flopsy saw something else. It was a red fox.
Uh-oh.
Flopsy thought. She hid fast. The Bunnies meet Tommy Brock. Episode 3. A surprise for Tommy. Red Fox went into her den.
Home sweet home,
She said. Red Fox looked around. She saw a trail of dirty footprints. Her pretty rug was muddy. Red Fox gasped.
What a mess.
Then she spotted Tommy Brock. The badger was asleep in her bed. Red Fox was angry.
That rotten badger.
She thought.
I must teach him a lesson.
Red Fox thought of a plan. She hurried outside. She filled a bucket with water. Then Red Fox slipped back into her den. Tommy was dreaming about his dinner.
I'll have the bunnies first. Then I'll eat the eggs and... Hey!
Splash! Water poured all over Tommy.
Surprise!
Red Fox cried.
Huh?
Tommy sat up.
Get out of my den!
Red Fox yelled. Tommy jumped out of bed. He ran and got the eggs. Flopsy hopped closer to the den. She peeked inside. Crack! Splat! Tommy was throwing eggs at the angry fox. The Bunnies meet Tommy Brock. Episode 4. Flopsy saves her sisters. Tommy Brock and Red Fox chased each other. They ran all around the den. Flopsy hopped back to her hiding spot. Then Tommy ran out of the den. Red Fox chased him. The two animals ran into the woods. Flopsy flew out of her hiding spot. She hopped into the den.
Mopsy?
Flopsy called.
Cottontail? Help!
Mopsy cried. Cottontail banged hard on the oven door.
We're in here!
She said. Flopsy raced to the oven. She opened the door.
Flopsy!
Her sisters cried. The rabbits ran outside. Tommy was still fighting with Red Fox.
Let's go home!
Flopsy said. The three bunnies hopped fast along the path. Soon they were home.
Thank you, Flopsy.
Mopsy said.
You saved us!
Cottontail said. Flopsy frowned at her sisters.
Never sneak out again!
She said.
We won't.
Mopsy and Cottontail said.
Good.
Flopsy said. She picked up the dusters and smiled.
Now let's finish cleaning.
The Bunnies Help the Tailor. Episode 1. Busy Bunnies. Mrs. Tiggywinkle knocked on the bunny's door.
I've got your clean clothes.
She called. Mrs. Rabbit opened the door. Thank you, Mrs. Tiggywinkle, she said. Mrs. Tiggywinkle saw 3 busy bunnies.
You are learning to sew.
Mrs. Tiggywinkle said.
What a nice job. We are making curtains.
Flopsy said.
Sewing is fun.
Cottontail said.
My cousin is a tailor.
Mrs. Tiggywinkle said.
I wish he could see your fine work.
Mrs. Tiggywinkle said goodbye to the bunnies. She brought clean clothes to more animals. Then she went to visit her cousin. The tailor was sewing, but he looked terrible. Mrs. Tiggywinkle gasped.
Cousin, you are sick. You must go to bed at once.
The tailor hung his head.
I can't go to bed.
He said.
I must finish this coat.
The tailor held up a fancy coat.
It's for the mayor,
He said.
and he needs it tonight.
The Bunnies Help the Tailor. Episode 2. No buttons. Mrs. Tiggywinkle saw some potato soup. She put it on the table.
Cousin, eat this soup.
She said.
You must get well.
That is Simpkin's lunch.
The tailor said.
He is my friend. He went to buy buttons for this coat.
Simpkin will not mind.
Mrs. Tiggywinkle said.
Please, you must eat.
The tailor ate the soup. Soon, Simpkin came back. He rubbed his belly.
It's time for lunch,
He said.
and I am very hungry.
Then Simpkin spotted the empty pot.
My lunch!
He cried.
I will make more potato soup.
Mrs. Tiggywinkle said. She looked around. But there were no more potatoes.
Simpkin,
The tailor stood up.
where are the buttons?
Simpkin frowned.
The shop was closed.
He said. Simpkin stomped over to the fire.
So we have no buttons.
He said. He folded his arms and sat down.
Oh no!
The tailor sank into the chair.
This is terrible. The mayor's coat must have buttons.
The bunnies help the tailor. Episode 3. Mrs. Tiggywinkle gets help. The tailor climbed into bed. He shivered and moaned.
Buttons. I need buttons for the coat.
Mrs. Tiggywinkle looked at the coat.
I will finish this coat. But I need help.
Suddenly, she smiled.
Of course. I know who can help me.
Mrs. Tiggywinkle ran outside. She passed the shop. She said.
The shop is not closed today. It is open.
Mrs. Tiggywinkle hurried to the rabbit's house. She knocked on the door.
Bunnies!
She called.
I need help.
The 3 bunnies opened the door.
Will you help me sew a coat?
Mrs. Tiggywinkle asked.
It's for the mayor. The mayor?
Flopsy squealed.
His coat?
Mopsy gasped.
Let's go!
Cottontail cried. The bunnies got their sewing baskets. They hopped to the tailor's house. Mrs. Tiggywinkle started to sew. The bunny started to sew, and... soon the coat was done.
But something is missing.
Flopsy said.
Buttons!
Mopsy and Cottontail said. The Bunnies helped the tailor. Episode 4. A coat for the mayor. Mrs. Tiggywinkle thought. She looked at Simpkin.
We cannot finish the coat,
She said.
so I will make a cake.
A cake?
Simpkin cried. He rubbed his belly.
Oh,
Mrs. Tiggywinkle said. She made a sad face.
we have no flour. And the shop is closed today.
Mopsy sighed.
No cake and no buttons.
Suddenly, Simpkin jumped up.
The shop is open!
He cried.
What?
Mrs. Tiggywinkle said.
Here!
Simpkin held out 3 gold buttons.
I was mad at the tailor. He ate my lunch.
Mrs. Tiggywinkle patted Simpkin.
It is hard to be hungry.
Mrs. Tiggywinkle gave the buttons to the bunnies. Then she looked at Simpkin.
Go to the shop for some flour. We will sew and bake.
Soon, the coat was ready.
Beautiful!
Mrs. Tiggywinkle said. Simpkin stared at the cake.
Beautiful!
He said. The tailor climbed out of bed. On the coat, 3 gold buttons shined.
Beautiful.
He said.
Thank you, bunnies.